You know, I grew up in and around the tournament fishing aspect of bass fishing, so I never really spent a lot of time. Most anglers kind of grew up on the bank and then they kind of progressed forward. Well, being fortunate that my dad was a tournament fisherman, I always grew up in and around the competition aspect of bass fishing. So as I got older, I began to be a little bit more curious about that aspect of fishing, just the simple aspects. There's no frills, no fancy boats, no competition, no glory, all just straight up fishing. And this year I was actually fortunate enough to discover just wade fishing. I know that sounds weird to be in my 30s and after the fact actually discover the art of actually wade fishing. Wade fishing and kayak fishing is so pure, so to the core. You really have to be a lover of the outdoors and really have an appreciation for fishing alone to appreciate that aspect of fishing. For me, the best part about wade fishing is, like I said, there is no frills about it. It's all just you and the fish, you, the fish, in nature. It's all it is. You're just walking the banks, and you really get to concentrate, and you become more aware of what's actually going on when you're out there fishing, because there's no distractions. You're not worried how fast you're going to get there, how slow you're going to get there, what time you got to get back. It's just you and your feet, your legs, and one fishing rod, and that is so pure. It's so attractive to me. After being, I don't want to say burnout with the competition side of fishing, but definitely exposed, overexposed to that. It's really refreshing and kind of gave me a new perspective on the art of fishing. So like I said, after I discovered this whole culture of wade fishing and kayak fishing, which I think personally is probably one of the purest forms of fishing there is. It's literally about you and the fish and figuring out what's the best condition and what's the best bait for that day. A lot of times in the competition world, it's a lot of ego. There's a lot of frills. There's always a distraction. There's always catch the fish and something else. That's not the case here, and it's really refreshing for me because I'm truly a fisherman. I love fishing. I love catching fish. I eat, sleep, I live for fishing. That's what I really like. I really love. So it was really refreshing to me, and it really recharged my passion for fishing all over again. I began looking for different places to go, I'd study maps and look for places that I could go and catch these fish because it's just so cool. You're going to a place that you have to remember. You're going to a place many times that may have never seen an angler, never seen a lure, or haven't seen a lure or bait in a very long time, because it takes a lot of work to get to these places. Most of the time you have to get to them by foot or by a kayak. So there's some work involved, and not a lot of anglers are willing to put the work in there to get there. So just discovering this whole culture of wade fishing was really refreshing to me, and it really restarted the whole passion of why I got started in fishing, and it just made me feel like a kid all over again. On this particular trip, I'm fishing with Grady's employee, Ryan Harder. Ryan has worked at Grady's a couple of years now, and how we actually decided to go on this trip, it was really just one of those spur of the moment kind of things. I just kind of called Ryan up. I found this really cool place that's here locally that I wanted to go check out, and it's actually a part of Lake Hartwell, and we just decided we'd go up there one day and just kind of scheduled it around his work schedule, and we just took off, grabbed a pair of waders and 2 rods and took off, and it was a great decision. A lot of times in these rivers, they're very conditional. And here in the upstate of South Carolina this year, the weather's been very dry, and a lot of people kind of tend to complain about that. But if you're a river fisherman, you live for these times when it's very hot, dry, and clear. Those fish seem to always bite better when it's dry Number one, because the water conditions are always going to be better when we have those periods of low rainfall. The water is going to be a lot clearer. It's going to be stable conditions. And that just makes those fish a lot more comfortable, and they're really vulnerable, and they're easy to catch.
There he is, bud. That's him. That's him. That's the one we've been looking for. Did you see that sucker take off when I set the hook? That's him there, babe. That's him there. He's not that big. He's about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. I thought it was gonna be a 4-pounder. He's maybe not even that big, dude. Maybe not even big as the ones we've caught. He's 1.5 pounds maybe. That's a good red eye. Oh, he's not even bigger than the rest of them. He's making all of that noise. All of that noise, he's not any bigger.
Fishing with Ryan was a really good experience for me. Ryan's a trout fisherman. Of course, most trout fishermen fish by wading, and the way that you approach these particular spotted bass in this river is very similar to the way you would fish for trout in a river. So he's already got the experience. He's got the head up on me here. And he also ties flies, so that really gives him a little bit of advantage out there, because we're using marabou jigs, and he's already familiar with how that particular material works in the water, what looks best, what colors work best. It's always best with marabou. Keep this in mind, especially in very clear water, to keep your colors very simple and solid. I don't like a lot of different color combinations, and we're just using a black or a brown marabou jig. That's as simple as that. And Ryan's actually using a jig that he's personally tied up, and it's really working well for him. We're getting a lot of bites. As soon as we started to work these hair jigs, we started off with soft plastics. The water has really cooled down a lot. We're here a little bit farther in the fall, and we're using these marabou jigs, and we're starting to get a lot of bites. You know, these river bass, they're really unique in the way they set up in this river system. All of this water is very, very shallow. The water is very, very clear, literally gin clear. You can see the bottom everywhere you go. And the fish set up in these small little depressions. Basically, when you're going down the river, there'll be these little depressions where it goes from knee deep to waist deep. And those are the depressions. And those also create current breaks. Current breaks are everything when you're river fishing. And a current break can be created by a small depression where it goes, you know, just a depression of 6 inches deeper or so. That creates a relief from that current. The fish just doesn't have to work as hard. They sit down in that current break, and they wait for food to be pushed towards them by the current. They also use rocks and other structures, so they can be a log in the water. It can be a shoal, a big rock, a boulder. All those create these current breaks, and those fish set up in all those current breaks. And as you can imagine, in a river such as this, there's current breaks everywhere, and there's only certain little places in there where these fish really set up, where all the elements really line up to hold those fish, and they can really attack the prey really well. So anytime you're out there river fishing or current fishing in general, it's really important to pay attention and be very observant to current breaks, because that's how fish relate, and that's how they feed on forage. So on this particular trip, Ryan and I, we're basically using only 2 baits here. We're using a small marabou jig, and Ryan actually ties these jigs himself. He's an experienced fly fisherman, loves to fly fish, and he's pulling some of that background off of fly fishing into this experience that we're having fishing for spotted bass here in this river there. We're using basically 2 baits, that's all. I carry 1 rod with me and a backpack full of basically full of snacks and things that I might need. Carry a few spools of line. I have caught a few on top water, but there's 2 baits in particular that I've fished pretty much all summer, and they did really well all year long, no matter if I was fishing for smallmouth spotted bass or red-eye bass in the rivers. These baits work really, really well, really exceptional. I used a 1/16 ounce black marabou jig with just a little touch a little pinch of Z-Man TRD on there just to bulk that bait up a little bit, and it also makes that bait fall a little bit slower. And I also use a Ned rig, and on this particular Ned rig I was using just a 1/20th ounce Z-Man Finesse Shrooms head and the hula stick in Canada Craw color. Those are the only two baits I really use all year, regardless of how clear the water was, how deep it was, or what particular river I was. Those two baits really mimic the fours that most river fish feed on. Most river fish are going to feed on small crustaceans, crawdads, little small bugs in the water. That's where the marabou jig comes in. There's little small minnows, mud minnows is what we call it. In this river, there's basically there's spotted bass. There may even be a few smallmouth. We didn't catch any smallmouth on this trip, on this particular trip, but there's Kentucky spotted bass that we have. They're in all our surrounding lakes here in the upstate of South Carolina. There's also there's red-eye bass. There's red-eye bass in this river, which is sort of like a subspecies of a spotted bass, much similar in nature and habitat, in their overall profile. Looks very similar to a spotted bass. And there's also largemouth in this river, and there's some big ones. We didn't run into any of the big fish on this particular outing, but there's some big fish in here, and I can promise you next year, now that I know the terrain, how they work and how they set up, next year we're gonna get back in there and hopefully we'll get to one of those 4 or 5 pound spotted bass that we've seen up there in the river. You don't need a lot of baits and a lot of tackle. Most of the time I'm gonna have one rod, one spinning rod. I'll typically carry another rod with me to put in my truck, but I only carry one rod with me as I'm wading. That just makes it easier to get through the brush and woods, and of course, since we're getting into the cool season, you gotta have a set of good quality waders. So I have a pair of Compass 360 waders and a good set of Compass 360 wading boots. Felt tip boots. It's really hard to find a felt bottom boot now. That really helps you when you're out there walking around on the rocks.